So I guess people invite me for fireworks. That's my reputation at this point.
Yeah.
So how shall we remember Mujib, the only Mujib of Bangladesh? There is actually another one who's in jail right now. But there is Sheikh Mujib of history, and how we are going to remember him. That is the topic of this discussion. Those of you who do not know me, this is Shafquat Rabbee. I'm a banker by the day, a teacher at night, and sometimes I write columns in international media during the weekend. And throughout the day, specifically from the toilet, I do Facebooking. And most likely, the latter activity brought me here. The organizers of the show know me mostly for my Facebooking activities, microblogging, or whatever fancy term that you use. So thanks for inviting me to talk on a massive topic like this. I am not a big fan of Mujib, but I'm not a denier of Mujib. His place in history. So take my words with a grain of salt, the humor with some honor. Don't think I'm dishonoring anybody here, okay? So who was Mujib? Who was Mujib? Jatir Pita Bongo Bondhu, the father of the nation and also the friend of the nation. And some people actually literally think that he was their father and also a friend. So that makes Sheikh Mujib a friendly father, the only one in history, both a father and a friend. So with that Mujib comes the question, how shall we remember him? Today, I will not pretend I'm a banker. I will not claim I'm a teacher. I will pretend I'm a philosopher today. So I'll dissect these words that you see. How, like what does how mean? We, who are we? What does remembrance mean? Like what does it mean to even remember anybody? And once we know all of it, then you need to decide, if you decide to remember somebody, under what context, under what type of pretext or freedom you remember anyone. That should be the next question that you need to understand. Under what type of diktat, obligation, are you obligated to remember anybody? So these are the very important modalities of this question. How shall we remember Sheikh Mujib or Mujib? Should there be even a conclusion about Mujib? That's the other question. Like, are we here to draw a conclusion? Like, well, this is precisely how he should be remembered. That's exactly what his daughter tried to do. They tried to define precisely how everybody should remember Mujib. Or should we just leave it? Should we just leave it like a free-for-all? You get to decide however you want to remember that guy, that person, that great man. It's up to you, right? So I'm of the view that it should be left for people to make whatever they want to believe or remember out of the historical character Mujib. So before we go too much into the history, let's talk about where is Mujib today. So that's where things get really contentious and also interesting. I just came back from Dhaka. I was there a few weeks ago. My own cousin, my uncle's son, he was a witness to one of the demolitions of Sheikh Mujib's statues, and he showed me a video. So the video was profound. The video is people are circling up that statue. Some people are trying to pull it down, and there is this scream from the audience, from the people who are there. Hold the pee, peshap atkaye rakhen, peshap atkaye rakhen, peshap koren na. Don't pee. So initially my brother, he thought they are asking them not to pee on the street or maybe on the gathering or something like that. But later on he realized the organizers of the demolition asking them to hold the pee so that they can pee on the statue once this is on the ground. So that is where Sheikh Mujib of today is. That's where his daughter left him, the historical character, today. people are holding their peace so that they can release it on his statues. This is disastrous. This is catastrophic from the standpoint of history, from the standpoint of Bangladesh's glorious liberation war. But that fact on video that somebody is asking people to hold peace so that they can release it, that is also part of history. And as a student of history, as a student of social philosophy and all that, you need to be cognizant about these topics. You cannot just brush it aside that it never happened. There was not one statue, but there were hundreds of statues, hundreds of murals that were destroyed. So that is part of history, and that should be part of this whole discussion, like how you should remember Mujib. Okay, so now let's define who are we? What is the we in this sentence? How shall we remember Sheikh Mujib? I would assume, just given the audience, the size of the audience, the demography of the audience, we are talking about Bangladeshis all around the world, some in Bangladesh and rest in the rest of the world, and also younger people, because I don't think that many old people are in here on a Zoom session like this. So we are talking about how should younger people who are listening to this video or this webcast or podcast, whatever you call it, how should they remember Sheikh Mujib? Okay, so that's going to be the basis of my discussion. And then finally, the bigger question, do we really need to remember anybody? What does it mean? Why do I need to remember Sheikh Mujib? Like, do people remember Churchill? Do British people remember Lord Cornwallis, Lord Curzon, French Napoleon, Americans George Washington? Do they remember them? Like, and what is the modality of that remembrance? Like, do people cry on a special month or special day, or gather at their shrines? And is it a political ritual to go to that shrine of George Washington or Churchill? That's not the case. Nobody does any of it. Churchill is not that old or that that much far removed from history as Sheikh Mujib. Both of them are maybe not contemporaries, but not too far apart. So do people do all those things? Or is there a lynch mob protecting any historical figure's history? Are there laws in any other part of the world protecting histories of an individual? Do people go to their national museums and remove newspaper pages from August 15, 1975? Do people feel afraid to talk about any historical figure on national TV? As you know, just a few days ago, Channel I, actually not a few days ago, yesterday, Channel I released the interview of the killer of Sheikh Mujib after 16 years of taking that interview. That's a disservice to history, but that is exactly what happened in Bangladesh. Bangladesh was prohibiting history that is problematic around Mujib to be released. There is actually another killer of Sheikh Mujib. I would like to hear from him. His name is Major Talim. He should be allowed to talk. We do not hear him, but we want to, as part of history. So these are all topics, like how do you remember somebody? Under what context, under what guidance, what principle, what type of coercion that you remember somebody? Now, I am of the view, so now I'm going towards how you should actually remember him. I am of the view that you should remember somebody based on your lived experiences. Mujib was a dictator. He died as a dictator. He was a dictator from the 1970s, which was a dangerous time for the world history. It was the same time when many other dictators, communist dictators, were killing millions. Mao Zedong of China just killed several million. Pol Pot, not too far away from Bangladesh, in Cambodia, killed several million. There were many in Africa, many in East Asia. It was a glorious time of dictators. Mujib was a man from that era. Maybe he took inspiration from those events, or maybe the time was exactly like that. He turned himself into a dictator. He moved from the Soviets to the West, and then from the West back to the Soviets. He vacillated between ideologies, from secularism to Islam to West to Western capitalism to communism. He was not consistent in his approach. He was the person under whom there was a famine, a huge one in Bangladesh, 1973. Hundreds of thousands of people died in that famine. There was this communist, ISIS-like entity, Sarbohara Party. Mujib killed their leader. Wikipedia says his son did under his behest. If you Wikipedia Shiraj Sikdar, that's what it says, that Kamal, his son, shot him, and then Mujib went to the parliament, bragged about it, like, where is Shiraj Sikdar? So he was involved in that kind of events. There were thousands of Naxalites and Sarboharas were killed. The first large-scale extrajudicial killing in Bangladesh took place under Mujib's watch at that time. So people who saw those events, my father's generation, remember Mujib as a dictator, a ruthless one, a failed one. And I can tell you my father's story. Back in 1975, August 15, my father was in a toilet with a bodna in his hand. And then the news came. Somebody announced that they just killed Sheikh Mujib. And my father lost his bodna. He just dropped it. I do not know whether that was part of excitement or fear or apprehension. I do not know what was the real reason, but he did lose the bodna. And I kept looking for that bodna. Like, why is it so important that a person on a toilet loses his bodna when they hear the news that somebody killed like a dictator? Yes. So my views of Sheikh Mujib, I grew up during the 80s. Somebody please mute yourself if you're not talking. So my views about Mujib is from that era, from that lived experience of my father's generation, where Mujib was a terrible political quantity. Nobody talked about him back then, during the 80s. So now, fast forward to today, Mujib has transformed from 1970s through the 80s to the 90s to the 2010s. The Mujib of 1960s was also there, 1950s. They reconstructed the Mujib of 1950s. Awami League says that he was in a toilet, just like my father, and he wrote a letter and threw it through the toilet window, and then Bhasha Andolon 1952 started, right? So that's the 1950s story of Mujib. 1960s, he was an agitator, a pretty successful one, a destabilizing agitator during the 1960s. 1970s, I just spoke about. 1980s, that's the time when people tried to forget Mujib. The leadership in Bangladesh, Ershad and others, they just tried to move away from him, Ziaur Rahman included. 1990s, that's when this whole Chetonar Babsha started in Bangladesh. That's a whole different topic. But the Chetonar Babsha, the business of Chetona, the business of 1971 started during the 1990s. And then there was this reconstruction of Sheikh Mujib. That gave us the Mujib of today. And let me give you a small little story. A 12-year-old kid went to Bangladesh. He's a student of history. This kid went, watched Bangladesh, and came back and reported to me that it felt like North Korea. I said, why? Have you ever been to North Korea? He said, no, but I've seen videos of North Korea on YouTube. And that's exactly how he found Bangladesh back in 2023. So Mujib became an unrecognizable figure, a reconstructed figure, where he was like a North Korean dictator. His statues were all over the country. His murals are everywhere. There are laws protecting his legacy. You cannot write anything, talk about him in any bad lights. Basically, a reconstructed Mujib was there that was unrecognizable to many of us. And that's the Mujib that was destroyed. Now, if you are a young person, that is your lived experience. What happened in 60s, what happened in 80s and 70s and 90s is not your business. You are not even there. You saw the collapse. You saw the people holding their pee so that they can unleash it on the fallen statue. So from this point of history, where Mujib goes and how people remembers him will definitely be weighed by the lived experience of all these young men and women who had to run for their lives from the Mujib's daughters, police, and Chhatra League with weapons and sharp assault weapons and all that. They ran for their lives. And that lived experience, just like the Badna of my father, will be given to the children of tomorrow. The kids who will be born in 2040s and 50s will talk about this history that they saw, just like that 12-year-old boy saw a North Korean-like collapse of a statue. Mujib is now a meme. Mujib is now a statue. Mujib is now a mural. And those are all gone. Mujib actually became a hologram figure as well. And he landed on a plane and walked on a runway as a hologram. All of that are gone. So that's where we are. The people of tomorrow will remember Mujib based on the most recent manufactured history that was manufactured by none other than his own daughter. Now, I'm not here to dismiss Mujib, the historical figure. I'm not here to offend everybody who thinks that he indeed is their father or national father or Jatir Pita. Maybe I did offend, but that was not the intent. I'm a student of history. I'm just giving you history in an unvarnished way. So we are not going to dismiss Mujib, but what I would leave this session with is that you should be allowed to remember Mujib however the heck you want. You should have the liberty to tell it to your children, write about it, make videos, memes, reels, whatever the modern technology is about Mujib, however the way you want. And those should be the remembrance, the modality of remembering Mujib for the future. And there should not be any law to prevent that. There should not be any diktat from a government, no sanitization by the editors of newspapers, and no Facebook social community standards prohibiting you from discussing however the way you want to remember Mujib. Mujib may come back as a different reconstructed figure someday. So I'm not here to declare that Mujib is dead. Mujib's history is over. I'm not here to declare that. But I'm here to tell you this. Mujib is not meeting his end anytime soon. So the historical Mujib did not end. And history will not end with Mujib. There would be other events, other figures in the Bangladeshi history. And we should be able to allow other people to emerge as large, as big as Mujib, if there is somebody someday in the future worthy of such status. Thank you.